Hi, Trevor here, reflecting on life through music. Welcome and thank you for stopping by. It's wonderful that you're here. Well, I trust you enjoyed my last video from the band Berlin and their song Like Flames. And in that particular video, we talked about the fact that there have been movements, civil rights movements in the past that have shaped our world, and that there is still a place for movements as long as they're respectful and concerned with the greater good of humanity. Well, we go from there to a bunch of guys that were formed in 1998 in Alabama. Mike, Jay, Joe, Jeremy and Brian. And since 1998 they've released 9 albums. And they come from a genre which I've talked about before. When we talk about the fact that this particular genre probably looks at the inner journey of us as human beings better than any other genre, there is certainly a place for this genre in the world, and that is the Christian music rock genre. And I just encourage you to stay with me over the next little while because we're going to share a bit of a story today. There's one of the songs in particular called Redeemed, which came off from 2012, and I wanted to pick up on this concept today of this thing called redemption. Now, redemption takes someone from where they were trapped into a place of freedom. That's what we're talking about with redemption. And certainly in this world today, cages and prisons come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And so to be able to be set free from that prison or that cage is an incredible experience indeed. And I suppose the best way to actually talk about this concept of redemption is to tell a story. So John was sitting in his cell, very sad and dejected because 30 years prior he killed his wife in a fit of rage, and it was a pretty open and shut case, and he got put into prison for 45 years because it was such a heinous, horrendous crime, and the whole of the world, or the whole of his whole community, seemed to know about it, and everybody was kind of glad that he got locked up for as long as he did. Now, for John, who had been in the same place for the last 30 years, he would find himself going back to that particular night and with a bit of sadness and quite a bit of regret, wondering what on earth happened to that and why it is that he lost control like that. And he was feeling very, very guilty, and it was overwhelming him and becoming and really, really big. In fact, in the world of Sally, who was the wife, it was such a heinous and horrendous crime that both of her parents died within 10 years of that moment because the grief was just unbearable for them, and they couldn't actually face it. And so first Dad and then Mum died, leaving just Kim, who was the sister, left. Now John just went through his motions. He'd been in prison for so long. He kind of was getting known around the place, and people kind of spoke to him, and there was the odd fight here and there. But John was just John. He just kind of got on with things and did things. But he was overwhelmed with this guilt that he had. Well, he was walking down a corridor one day, and he noticed there was a door open, and as he was walking past, he saw this guy with a group of 10 just sitting around a circle having a chat. He was going to walk by and think, oh yeah, whatever, but something just compelled him to walk in. Everyone turned around to face him because they didn't expect John to walk in the rain, but there he was. He was just standing there. And Joe, who was kind of leading the group, he kind of said, hey John, why don't you come and sit down? So over the course of the next little while ago, John started to hear some words that he had never heard before. He heard the word forgiveness. He heard the word unconditional love. He heard the word of thinking within ourselves of how we can be better. He heard about the fact that he is loved no matter what he's done, and he can find forgiveness. Well, because he wanted to be, cool, he kind of said, yeah, whatever, Joe, no worries, that's fine, yeah, whatever. And he just kind of left. But the words and the feel of that room stayed with him. And it wouldn't let him go. So a few weeks went by and he found himself feeling a bit weird and a bit different. And then one day, there's a knock on the cell and say, hey, John, you got a visitor. So John goes out to the visitor centre, and there's Joe sitting there. And John nearly didn't go to sit down, but he said, oh, what the heck? So he sat down and had a chat to Joe. And over the next course of the next hour, Joe was able to talk to him about forgiveness and love and care and respect. And it made such a lasting impression on John that he asked if Joe would come back. And Joe said he would see how he went. So Joe was a preacher in a local church. He felt that he needed to go into the prison from time to time and just catch up with the guys and see what they were doing and how they were going. And so he tried to get in there once a month if he could. And he really appreciated just the rawness of the guys and just really appreciated getting to know them. And as he was leaving the prison that day, he just thought about this conversation with John and just how well it had gone. And he just shot up a bit of a prayer, just asking for God to protect him and look after him. And Joe thought, well, that would be it. I'll just kind of leave it and see where it goes. Well, it's quite happens in stories like this. As Joe was preparing to preach on the following morning, he noticed a new lass standing at the back of the church and just watching and waiting. And as the service came to an end, he went up to meet this lass, and her name was Kim. And Kim then went to share on with him over the next hour the story of how her sister had died 30 years earlier and what a horrendous and horrible thing it was. And I'm so happy that this guy's in prison. Yeah, John deserved everything that he got. But I just can't get over this thing. It's really, really bothering me. I can't get over this thing and I want it to leave, but I'm just really angry about what he did to Sally. A bit of light, a bit of a glimmer came into Joe at this point because he wondered whether the John that Kim was talking about was the same John that was in jail that he spoke to just that week. And so, of course, he just thought about that for a while. And, that following week he went back. And sure enough, as he listened to John's story, he heard about the fact that, yes, he had killed his wife 30 years earlier, and that this woman had a sister named Kim. Now, Joe couldn't believe what he was thinking. He could not believe that he met John and then Kim in such a short space of time, so he thought there must be something worth pursuing. And so he thanked John for sharing his story and then left. And the following Sunday, Kim came back and Joe thought for a while whether he should bring anything up or whatever. So eventually Kim made a beeline for him again and Joe said, hey Kim, I met John in prison last week, in fact the week before, and this is the John that killed your sister Sally. I just thought I'd share that with you. Well, Kim just looked like daggers at him and stormed out of the church. And Joe thought, oops, maybe I've made a mistake there. But he just continued to shoot up prayers from time to time. And sure enough, the following Sunday, Kim came back, and after the service, Kim just said to Joe, hey, look, I'm sorry for how I was last week. Hearing that you'd met John was a bit of a shock for me, and I'm really, really angry about this guy. And then Joe was able to share about the fact how cut up John was and how regretful he was about the whole thing and how sad he was and how much guilt he felt. And then Joe had a brainwave. He said to Kim, hey Kim, how would you like to meet John? Would you like to come to prison with me and meet John? And say how you feel. Perhaps you can put some stuff to rest. I probably need to talk to John first and ask what he thinks about that. But why don't you give me your number and I'll check it out with him and I will get back to you. So Kim said, yeah, let's, I'll see how I go. I don't know at the moment, but I'll see how I go. So anyway, the next week, Joe went back again to prison. And he said to John how he'd met Sally's sister Kim, and John couldn't believe what he was hearing. He said, oh, really? Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Wow. And then Joe just asked, would you like to meet Kim? Would you like to see her? Now, John was a bit taken back by this for a while, but after talking a little bit more, he remembered the conversations about being loved and forgiveness and all the rest. He said, yes, I would. And so sure enough, after a phone call, Kim agreed to come in. And so the day came where Kim met Joe at the prison and they walked in together. And they waited for John in the visitor centre. Joe was not sure how this was going to go. He shot off a bit of a prayer again. Kim had a look of stone on her face. Joe really didn't know how it was going to go. So anyway, John walked in. Kim nearly went up to leave, but she stayed. Anyway, there was stony silence for a while. Kim was meeting her sister's killer, who she knew. First time for 30 years. And Joe just sat there, and eventually John said, thank you for coming in, Kim. Look, I know this doesn't mean much to you. And I have no right for you to even be here. But I'm really, really sorry about what happened to Sally. I have no excuse for it. There's just no excuse, and I'm really, really sorry for what's happened. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. I suppose thank you for coming in, but I'm really, really sorry for what I've done. Well, at that point, Kim got up and she asked Joe whether they could leave, and they left the prison. Kim was crying all the way to the car, and John just sat there and eventually went back to his cell. But the meeting and the kindness of Joe in particular worked on Kim, and over time, she realised that the best thing that she could do to be set free is to forgive John. She wasn't sure whether she could actually go back and see him. That seemed a bit hard, but what she decided to do was to write him a letter and to thank him for saying sorry, and whether Joe could take that in. And sure enough, Joe went back with the letter, gave it to John, and John cried. He was so happy to get that letter from Kim. But the meeting still worked on Kim a bit, and she felt like she'd seen true sadness and true remorse in John, and that touched her somehow. And she ended up writing to the parole boarder and asking whether John could be put into a lesser security prison, because it felt to her, like he had learned his lesson. And over the course of 12 months, there were hearings and there were discussions and there was counselling, and sure enough, John was moved to a lower security prison. He was never going to be released because of what he'd done, but he was moved to a lesser security prison, and for the first time in a long time, he saw the sky, he saw birds, he saw grass, and he experienced what it meant to be just a little bit free. He'd received a letter from Kim, there'd been movement, and he felt better. Kim eventually did go back and see John, and I suppose over the course of the next year or so, she caught up with John a few times, and they were able to talk about the things that had happened. And eventually, Kim was able to say to John, "John, I forgive you. I forgive you, John." And with those words, John never saw Kim again. But he experienced, from someone he never thought would come, he experienced forgiveness. And he felt like a big weight had been lifted off of him. And over the course of the next 5-10 years, he learned to forgive himself. This is what redemption is all about. John was in a cage and Kim was in a cage. And the thing that got them out of their cages was this thing called forgiveness. And the redemption that comes from forgiveness. We all have cages and cages of different sizes that we are in right now. And it could be that your feeling of self-worth, of disgust with yourself, something that may have happened. There is a way for you to find redemption. There is a way for you to find forgiveness, and there is a way to find love and acceptance. I'm not going to let you know what that is. I don't want to push my beliefs on you. But if you do find that you are looking for redemption, I really encourage you to put a comment in the comments below about, "Trevor, I need redemption," and then we can work out how we communicate through the vast ways of communication these days about how to take that further. But I'm not going to talk about it in this video, as just to say that redemption and forgiveness and new starts are all possible, no matter what age or version of life you have been in. Redemption is something for you. All you have to do is ask for it. Stories like this one actually happen every day in this world. People get together, and where forgiveness wasn't possible, it became possible. And stories like this happen all the time. And it's great to know that even though we may hate the person and we may think that they're the worst person in the world, forgiveness can come given the right situations. And people like Joe, the preacher, are often the way that these things happen. So if you are looking for redemption, there is an answer for you. Leave a comment below. Well, on to the clips today. And, you know, Mike Weaver, the lead singer of Big Dada Weave, has a fantastic voice. And so we've got a couple of songs, both which came off the Love Came to Life album from 2012. We have got the song Redeemed, which came from the 2012 album. This is the official clip. And you can just see here that Mike knows what redemption means, and Mike has experienced redemption for himself. And hence the writing of this fantastic, amazing song that he delivers so well. We then have The Only Name, which also came off the 2012 album, and that particular song is live. So I encourage you to look at those two videos if you would like. And also if you want to look at Berlin from last time, that clips as well there. But it doesn't feel like you should go back there today. I think you need to look at these two songs and just resonate and reflect on what they're about. Well, I trust that will be an encouragement for you today. If you do like this video, please give it the thumbs up and subscribe. If you've come back for another video, it's fantastic that you're here, so thank you very much for doing that. Well, that's it for today. I really trust this video has been an encouragement for you. Redemption is possible. It really, really is. Leave a comment below. Next time we're going to go on to Big Mountain and the song Baby I Love Your Way. So until then, I'll catch you around.